Hello, Group 1. I'd like to give you some feedback about your project based on the documents and the items that you've already uploaded to Moodle Rooms. I'm going to begin with the demographics handout that you included. This is a decent draft. It is not a complete piece of work as of yet. It still needs a lot more details. There's not much substance to it. And you also need to include, for example, when you're talking about races over here, we say the majority of races are white. Well, you need to talk about what percentage of your races are white, Asian, Hispanic. Don't just say the majority. That doesn't really specify exactly the number of people that we're talking about. You did include over here 8,000, but that does not tell me 8,000 out of how many. What is the total population of the city? So you guys need to include a little bit more details in terms of the number of population for the city of Pasadena, since that is your location, and start listing the percentages. I'd also like to see a map showing the location of your restaurant, your theoretical restaurant, because just reviewing this content over here, I'm not really sure exactly where it's located. I mean, you're talking about briefly where it is, but there's not really much detail about the demographics and why this particular location would be a really good spot. The next thing that I want to share with you is that the font and the text sizes that you guys use. I mean, right here it looks like you're using Times New Roman 12, which is fine, but the rest of your documents are not the same font, so you guys need to be consistent. Some of you are using Times New Roman 12, some of you are using Calibri, some of you are using Arial, so the fonts are all over the place. This, once again, needs to look like it came from one person, so you guys need to coordinate and agree on the style and the font that you guys are going to be using throughout your entire portfolio. Alright, moving on in this particular document, this is a very bland presentation of your competitors. What I would like to see is a table listed in this section with at least 3 columns that will list the names of the restaurants and then the style and then the type of food if it's anything in particular. Don't just list it like this. This is too boring, too bland. Let's move down here. I think that's it for the demographics section. I was wondering whether or not this was the only section that you're uploading with regards to the background information, because if it is, then this is incomplete. You do need to have a section that discusses the background of the restaurant in terms of what is the name of the restaurant, what was the inspirational behind that name, why Italian upscale. You need to describe the theme, the ambiance, the decor, the service style. So I did not find that section on Moodle Rooms in the discussion. If it is, please send me an email to let me know where it is so I can have a look at it and give you some feedback. And if you have not done that as of yet, you do need to include that as a part of your portfolio, because that part is completely missing at this point from based on what I'm able to determine. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and close this, and then we're going to go over to the next item, and that is going to be your recipes, or your cost card I should say. And your cost card, the calculations seem to be done really well, but once again we've got a problem in terms of the size of the font and the style. So if I click over here, this looks like it's Calibri 11 and it's bold, and then you come over here and this is 10 and it's bold, and then over here we come down to this and this is Cambria. It just looks like a whole bunch of different people were playing around with this Excel sheet, and once again all of this needs to look consistent and needs to be cleaned up. Over here you've got a really large 16 font, and then if you go to the top it's an 11 font, so I don't know what's going on here. So you guys need to be consistent about this. There is some yellow highlighting going on over here. Just go ahead and get rid of all of that stuff. And in terms of the cost card, you need to have the cost card, a cost card created for every single item on your menu that needs to be assembled. For example, on your menu you've got a beverage menu that includes cocktails. Cocktails are typically beverages that are comprised of 2 or more ingredients. Now that means it needs to have a recipe. Currently you do not have a recipe for any of your beverages, which means you need to create a cost card for every beverage item that is assembled. The other thing that you need to do on this particular cost card is you've got some recipes that says to taste. Okay, there is no such thing as to taste when it comes to costing out a recipe. You need to have a specific amount. So you need to figure this out or talk to someone who might be able to tell you how much salt you need to be putting in your recipe. You can't cost out to taste. I need to have a specific amount over here. Now I do see that you've purchased some salt, but you can't just put 1 cent over here or to taste for a recipe that is going to serve 15 people. So figure out how much the taste is. And you should do that for all of the other items because I see that appearing in several of those cost cards. Alright, let's move on to production cost. I have no idea what this is. I was very confused when I looked at it. And this is not a part of the assignment. So if you guys are doing this basically to try to figure out how much your ingredients are going to cost for the day of the presentation, fine, but you do not need to include this section for the assignment. Alright, let's go to the pricing markup on cost method. Alright, so you guys did a really nice job of laying out all of the ingredients that you guys are producing and coming up with a cost per serving. It looks like you typed this in manually, and what you can do is you can just automatically get this populated from your cost card. So I can click on equal over here, and then I'm going to go to the cost card and find that item, which is right here, and I would select the cell that has the amount and I would click on enter just to make sure that you've got the right amount. Anyway, so it looks like the aubergine is going to cost you about $5.34, and you've decided that your desired food cost percentage is going to be 28%. Let's go ahead and center this to make it easier. And that would make your selling price $19.07. Now this is a starting point for your selling price based on the markup on cost method. However, you can't just put $19.07 on the menu if you are using psychological pricing. So what you'll need to do is you will need to round that up to either $19.05 or $19.10. So it needs to go slightly higher up, or you can modify it a little bit down. Now, since this is an upscale restaurant, you want to avoid using 4 digits in the prices. You want to stick with 2 digits maximum, because 4 digits is just not typically done on an upscale restaurant menu. So if you wanted to modify this, what you'll need to do is you want to apply psychological pricing adjustment and also the no method in addition to the markup on cost method. So to apply psychological pricing for this particular case, what you'll want to do is let's go ahead and make sure that this is all selected and it is a dollar cell. And you might want to change this to $19, or you might want to change this to $20. So it is your choice. Okay, you either mark it up or you mark it down, but don't leave it at 1907. Okay, now here we've got another problem. You decided that you want your desired food cost to be 28%, which is fine, and that gives you a selling price of $4.18, which is an extremely low selling price for an upscale restaurant, and it creates this inconsistency in the terms of the prices that you're listing, because you've got items that are $19 and then you drop all the way down to $4 and then you jump back up to $19 and then you're going all the way down to $1.03. Nobody sells mashed potatoes, by the way, for $1.03. So I do understand that although $1.30 might be the 30%, this is where you have to combine sometimes pricing methods and adjust your prices based also on your market that you're serving. So you do need to modify these prices. And since you're going for an upscale restaurant, what I would suggest that you do is that you increase all of these items over here, especially the menu items, the food items that are main courses perhaps. The chicken, for example, this needs to go into the double digits. So you're not going to be selling chicken for under $10 in an upscale restaurant. You'll need to increase that price. Just something to consider. Your appetizers or your desserts, I should say, the tiramisu, $6.79 is a bit low. You may want to increase that to $9 or even $12. Your mashed potatoes are currently at $1.30. You might want to increase that to perhaps $6, $7, $8. You can go up to $8 if you want to. So go ahead and go through the entire menu again. You've got a starting point with the yellow highlighted items, but now you need to go ahead and adjust it in order to apply psychological pricing and the market approach method as well. All right, so that is my feedback for your cost card and for your pricing method. I did notice over here also that although you've got your food items, you do not have any of your cocktails. Once again, you need to create a cost card for your cocktails, and you also need to have prices created based on the cost cards. Alright, the next item that we're going to go through are your recipes. Okay, so on the recipe section, once again, you guys need to become a lot more consistent in terms of the font. So once again, here you guys are using Cambria font size 12, whereas in some of the other documents you use some other fonts. So go ahead and fix that, please. You guys need to decide which you want. My recommendation is do not use Times New Roman. That is one font that you definitely want to avoid. Alright, the next thing that you guys want to do is, the reason that you create typically recipes for a restaurant is to use it as a training tool for your staff. So when you hire new people, you can share the recipe with them, and then they can follow it and they can see how to produce the item. Now, although you have the recipe here and the directions, one thing that is missing is you want to add a picture of every single item that you have in your recipe. And the reason that you want to do that is because one of your employees might be able to look at the recipe and follow the directions and prepare it, but they're never going to know exactly how you want it presented unless you have an image or a picture that shows the exact final product. So what I would recommend is to perhaps insert a table over here of 1 row and 2 columns. So what you might want to do is just copy all of your ingredients, put them over here, and then put an image over here of the actual product. That way you have them side by side and you're not using up too much space. And once you do that, you can go ahead and highlight this box and just remove the borders. People don't need to see the borders. Just go ahead and put the image right over here. Okay. The other thing that I noticed is that on your recipes, when you've got a new section, go ahead and bold it. Don't just leave it all the same style. So go ahead and create a header like that by making it bold or making it a little bit larger. And some of your recipes use the word directions. And if you scroll down, some of the other ones are called preparation. Be consistent. Either call it preparation or use the word directions. Directions typically are better. Also, leave a gap between these two. Go ahead and space between the actual ingredient list and the method of preparation. The other thing that you want to consider when you're working on or redoing your recipes is be consistent about the way that you're presenting your directions. For example, most of your directions over here are in narrative format, so they're in short little sentences or paragraphs, which by the way is not the best way to present directions. You want your directions to be numbered, and you want them to be very short statements, telling people they all have to begin with a verb, an action verb. You need to tell people what they need to do. For example, add salt, heat pot, preheat the oven. Alright, so if you scroll down, you'll notice that some of your recipes, this is another thing that I noticed, you've got some ingredients that have bullets and some of them that don't have bullets. And some of your recipes, if you scroll down here, are not aligned, and some of them are basically in this short statement format that I am recommending that you use. So decide on one format and make it consistent throughout. Don't mix and match, and it looks like you basically copied recipes from a whole bunch of different resources and you just stuck it onto this document. It all needs to look like it came from one source, and that source would be you. All right, let's get out of this. All right, on your menu, you've got the name of your restaurant, which is Italiano Moderno. And you've got a simple, elegant style of menu, which I really like. There is not much in terms of branding on the menu. So on your menu, some of the items basically have a listing of the ingredients that are in them. So you're talking about the rice and it's sauteed and mushrooms, but then you've got some items that basically list ingredients without really talking about the type, without any details. For example, over here, when you talk about pasta in a savory broth, well, what kind of broth is it? Is it vegetable broth? Is it a chicken broth, beef broth, seafood broth? You need to be a bit more specific. So the descriptive terminology for some of these items needs to be redone. Overall, though, I think he did a really nice job with the menu. It's elegant, it's chic. It does represent what I would expect in a fine dining or an upscale restaurant menu. Now, I notice that you don't have any prices on your menu, which is expected in an upscale restaurant, but I notice that you do have prices on your beverage menu. So you might want to be a bit more consistent about that. And it looks like you've got two beverage menus, and I'm not sure why you have two different menus. So you've got this menu, and then you've got the other one. Perhaps the other one is the one that you'll be using for the presentation. I don't know. So you guys need to kind of let me know why you're using two different menus, or perhaps explain it during the presentation. All right, let's go through the menu together. Beautiful presentation. I like the background. It complements the menu. I like the design. The text is great. However, here are a couple of things that you want to modify. You've got cocktails, and then you've got other beverage. This is singular, and you've got plural over here. So you need to change this to beverages. The other thing that you want to do is the prices should never precede the title of the menu item. So go ahead and switch this around to Bellini and then put the price. Don't put the price first and then put the title of the menu item. The other thing that you might want to do is, it looks a little bit crowded over here. So what you might want to do is add just a little bit more space between the descriptive terminology or the description and the next menu item. Next thing that you want to consider is, when I look at this particular menu, and let me go ahead and just decrease the size a little bit. It looks like you've got prices that are, $11, $12, $12, $13, which is fine. But you don't list any prices under other beverages. How much are you charging for the cream soda, cafe, or the sparkling water? So if you're going to use prices, use them throughout or don't use them, period. So you got to pick and choose. You can't do one and not the other. On the right side of your menu, I get the impression that these prices are perhaps for a bottle, because I think it might be a bit too steep to charge people $89 for one glass. Now, I'm just guessing that you're charging that for the bottle. And if you are charging $89 for the bottle, then you'll want to change this image to a bottle. If you are charging this amount for the glass, then you don't need to change this image. So I'm not sure whether you're charging for the bottle or for the glass, but if it's a glass, get rid of this image. And if you are charging for the glass, then you can go ahead and leave it. But once again, leave a little bit more space between each menu item because it looks a little bit too crowded. The other thing that you want to consider on your menu here, you've got prices that start at $89 and then you drop to almost half, which is $41 over here. You can't have these drastic changes in prices on your menu. The prices between one item and another need to be very close to each other. Otherwise, what you do is you detract from the actual purchasing of some of these items. So you can't go almost $90 to $40 and then jump back to $95 and then jump back to half the price and then jump to $30. There needs to be a bit more either ascension or descension in terms of the prices. You can't just fluctuate that drastically. And we've got the same price over here. I mean, the same problem over here. You go from $25 to $120 and then you jump to half that price. So you need to be a bit more strategic in terms of your pricing and how you present the items on your menu. So that's something that you need to go ahead and redo. So that's it for my feedback on your menus. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about, please let me know. I am looking for your floor plan and I haven't been able to find it as of yet. You do need to have a floor plan. You do need to have the section called backgrounds where you talk about your theme and ambiance and all of that stuff. I briefly want to talk about your table setting. I like the presentation. However, you need to be aware that whatever utensils you place on your table need to reflect the food that you are serving on the day of the presentation. For example, when I look at this particular setup, I get the impression that there is no salad being served because there is no salad knife. If you are serving a salad, then you need to have a salad knife. It looks like you've got an ice cream spoon over here, and if you're serving ice cream, then fine, but if you're serving anything else like a tiramisu, then you need to have a spoon and a fork. So your table setting needs to complement the menu items that you will be serving on that day. If you have any questions about anything that I covered so far, please let me know, and I would be happy to talk to you in person, in class, out of class, or just online if we need to do a virtual chat.